Well, she is back on American soil. Katie Goodman, after her time on the continent of Australia, bouncing between both Australia and New Zealand for the Women's World Cup, got back just in time to experience it the way Americans have been experiencing it, and that is with a lot of caffeine and sleep deprivation, one or the other, perhaps both, as we're now talking a little over 12 hours removed from the final whistle. Katie, how's it going?
Good, good. I mean, I tried to sleep off, what felt like a hangover after watching that game. It was such a heartbreak. I'm so sad still. I was hoping I'd wake up and maybe it'd be a bad dream or something, but my sleep schedule is all over the place. So I've been waking up at around 2 p.m. every day, which feels terrible. I feel so useless. I'm a 8 a.m. kind of gal, waking up early and getting things done. So yeah, man, that game, no words.
We we can't say we're completely surprised. In fact, you were there in person in New Zealand for what could have been their final match, just in the group stage, but they were able to get out of that on the tiebreaker that they had available to them to get into the knockout rounds. We'll go back and we'll look at your experience being behind the scenes with Fox Sports and all of that first, but let's go ahead and dive into this match that's fresh on everybody's minds. Early on, USA, I thought, obviously looked like they were playing the best ball they had played the entire stretch. We aren't really including Vietnam in that, but this is a USA team that ultimately that goal that Haran scored against her teammate and the Dutch, that proves to be the final goal during regulation scored by the United States in their final three matches. They could not get on the end of any promising passes that we saw this morning, last night, in that matchup against Sweden. I thought there were some promising opportunities, but boy, I was screaming what I wouldn't do just to be able to see a volley or a half volley, somebody be able to put one on frame. But every time a ball got to somebody's feet, it just seemed like it wasn't meant to be for them to be able to settle it and then get the shot off.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into X's and O's, right? And I will get into that in a minute, but I felt like the rhythm, the momentum, the culture of the team was off from the get-go. I know it's a lot of young talent, new talent, but those first couple of games, especially that game that I was at there in person, it felt like something was really, really off there. Pair that with Vlatko not making subs. That it's when you start feeling that, hey, there's the rhythm is slightly off, we're not quite operating the way we used to. That's when you throw a firecracker in the mix, maybe an Alyssa Thompson who has that speed, who can kind of create a spark and shake things up. It's just anything, literally anything different to change things up. But what I saw was that they were building out of the back really well. They weren't using the middle of the pitch often at all in this last game. I think part of that was because Rose Lavelle was not in the picture. If you watched last game, she got a double yellow, racked up too many yellows during the tournament, which means she had to miss this game. And I think her presence was, in fact, deeply missed. But that doesn't negate the fact that this entire tournament, they have not been able to finish in the final third. The biggest pushback that I've heard from people is that they wanted to see Sophia Smith in the Alex Morgan role there as a center striker. I don't blame them. I still think Sophia Smith did a great job, but it did just feel a little bit too discombobulated, in my opinion. There were some nice balls driven in, but there were also a lot of forced crosses and forced passes. You could just tell that they weren't exactly in a flow state. And yes, this last game was their better soccer, but it wasn't the best that they could have shown us. And I think they came out so strong and did so well in that first half. But what got them is that they didn't put the goal in the back of the net to begin with. Like we can bring it down to, oh, we lost by a millimeter. No, you lost in the first half when you didn't score, when you had all the momentum. That's when you lost the game, in my opinion. And yes, they came out in the second half and they did well and they kept bringing it to them. But of course, Sweden woke up by them because I think they realized, hey, this isn't the same US team that we've been up against in the past. I think they had a little bit of hope there in the second half, and that's what we saw. And that's how we ended up in PKs. Now, poor Rapinoe, she's gotten so much crap and it's not deserved. I mean, I think, was it her best performance? Absolutely not. We all know she can do better. Otherwise she would have never played at that level. She wouldn't have broken records and whatnot. But I think that it may have been one of those moments where she might have been better off sitting this one out. There's a couple of times just the crosses were bad. I mean, even corner kicks, not good. I mean, driven balls to the front post, it looked like it was a mishit. It didn't look like an intentional drive to the front post. It looked like a mishit. And then even coming down to her PK, I think I've talked to people about this before. All of the games that I've seen Rapinoe show up in, you can see in her core, deep inside, something is going on. You can see it on her face. You can see it in her energy. That something is going on there for her. And I don't know if it's maybe the process of letting go that she can't quite break past. There's some sort of mental block for her. I don't think it is actually her talent that is the issue. I think there's a mental block there. It was one of the first games that they had played, their opening game in the tournament. And she had missed a goal, and it's just you could see her face drop, you could see her energy drop. Whereas the old Rapinoe would have just bounced back, laughed it off, been a goofball, and then like kept going at it. But instead, you could tell it was just there's so much weighing on her. And I think she carried that into this game. I think she carried that into this entire tournament. And I think it's moments like that where you have to know your team, and you have to know your players. And even, sometimes you have to protect your players more than they are willing to protect themselves. Of course you say, hey, you want to go in the game? Of course they're going to say yes, but I don't know that this was the time for her. I understand it's her last tournament, right? But like, this is a World Cup. This isn't just an exhibition game or a friendly. This is the World Cup. And so I would have liked to maybe see someone else in the mix with that one. As for PKs, everybody has missed a PK in their life, even in big games, or small games, like that's just really unlucky for her. And I just feel terrible. And I think we can chalk that up to whatever mental battle maybe she's been going through at the moment. But I mean, I can see it all over her face and her body language. And then, going into this Sweden game, I was looking at the betting odds and how the US was so favored and how Sweden was not. I never saw that. From when I saw them play in their last matchup. The set pieces, I thought we were going to lose in run of play. Honestly, I thought we were going to lose in within 90 minutes off of a really solid set piece, because their set pieces are almost undefendable, And so when we went to PKs, I already knew. I'm like, oh, we're SOL, because that's their bread and butter. So we're lucky that they missed the couple of shots early on that they did, and that we even made it past that for the first round of PKs with them. But I had said it that this might be the year that the US women's national team makes history for the wrong reasons, which is unfortunately them not being the top 3 for the first time in tournament history, because they're knocked out by Sweden. I called it. I felt like Sweden is a team that could do it with this US team. I think had we shown something a little different in the earlier games, it would have been better, but there was just too many breakdowns, too much lack of communication, not enough, leadership out there. There was a lot of breakdowns, a lot of work to be done, but also, again, a super young team. So like in 4 years, this team is going to be seasoned. They're going to be it's going to be a different situation. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a different coach either. Plus, we have a ton of other ladies coming up the pipeline. So I'm not worried about them for next year. I think this was a setback that they really needed. Honestly, I think they needed to be put in check a little bit. I think US was starting to get a little cocky, right? And, thinking, hey, we're better than everyone in the world, when in reality, the world is stepping up. The world is stepping up to meet us, and that's fantastic. That's fantastic for the world of women's soccer, but that means that we have to keep stepping up, right? So it is what it is.
Yeah, again, looking at Sweden's run so far, so many of their goals have come off of dead ball opportunities, whether it be set pieces, whether it be from penalties. Obviously, great size out there as well. So it was a hold your breath moment anytime they had a corner kick or a similar set piece opportunity. Perhaps the only nation as unhappy as the United States that they were just the runner-up out of their own group was Sweden, because that was a 1 versus 3 matchup. We remind you, nations like Germany, the Olympic champions of Canada, they too have already been sent packing. They eliminated even before the United States. So some big names have tumbled, but we knew that one of these 2 nations was not going to be a top 3 team, because they were both colliding here in the first round of the knockouts, the round of 16. So Sweden knew that their journey could just as easily come to an end. The difference is they had Musovic back in goal, and she had plenty of brilliant stops on what could have been goals on any other given night for the United States. But I still don't think the United States gave themselves as many chances that they really could have had, just because when a ball got to their feet, they wanted that perfect touch and could not put it on frame. You talk about Rapinoe's sub. I think we agree Lynn Williams was a good sub. Trinity Rodman had opportunities, but when Williams came on, just seeing her fresh legs out there compared to a field that was full of tired legs, understandably. And I'm impressed some individuals were able to even handle a PK after 120 minutes. We're just reminded how fantastic these athletes are, both countries and throughout the Women's World Cup, that they're able to compete not just 90, but 120 minutes at that level. But Lynn Williams got on the end of a couple of great passes up top. Perhaps she should have been a little bit more selfish at times and go ahead and go into the box rather than immediately look for that service. But you knew there was a chance. They were knocking on the door, but when it was all said and done, after 120 minutes, it went to those PKs. I think you're a little bit more forgiving than I am on penalty kicks. And for me, again, I'm oversimplifying it, but because of all the broadcasts I do for college level, I know it's not as big of a stage, but a conference championships that go to PKs, NCAA postseason that go to PKs, we see it too often. And the moment you saw the first Swedish player miss the frame altogether, that should have been a wake-up call for everybody, a reminder. That goalkeeper is put at such a disadvantage. If you put it on frame and she stops it, kudos to her. You know who didn't do that? Musovic. Did not stop, didn't even guess correctly on any of the three balls that missed the frame altogether. Your job at the penalty spot is to aim for the back of the net. Don't try to finesse the edges. Put pace on the ball. And we saw Nair come up with the only stop, and she almost had a second. But that second one's a reminder, even if it was by just a millimeter that it got over, even if that goalkeeper guesses correctly, gets a hand on it, that ball still has a chance to go in. The only time you have 0% chance of converting on your penalty is what we saw from the United States with three balls completely missing the frame. I've never played at that level. I've never had that pressure on me. But you just wish every coach at every level had some way of bringing that player back to earth for a moment and reminding them the odds, the math behind it all. You have to put that ball on the frame. Forget the embarrassment if the goalkeeper stops it. Kudos to them, because that goalkeeper is failing almost every single time, and they get back up and bounce back. You have to put that ball on frame to give yourself a chance. United States arguably had three penalties they could have put away, any one of them, and they would be surviving and advancing. Instead, we see an end to the run. Sweden very deserving to move on after they absorbed all the blows for the United States in that first half and were able to persevere.
Right. And, then you look at Nair, who went in and she had a goal right down the middle. Boop.
Yeah. She showed her teammates how to do it.
Yeah. She as a keeper knows where to put it, even in the most basic, simple, obvious spot right down the middle of the goal. But you got to hand it to her too, because not only did she make those huge saves, she put in a goal. I don't think people give keepers enough credit for being able to take a PK, because the whole game, their job is to be explosive and big, get it out. They're not aiming for, finesse or for like a small space. They don't have to really settle their nerves. They're just getting it out the whole game. And then for her to step into that position and to be able to find that composure in that heat of the moment and still make it happen. Like, I think for the US, for me, I think was the player of the game for the US. But I mean, Musovic, my goodness, so many goals would have gone by if it weren't for her. But even then, I felt like there were times where, yes, she blocked a lot of really good goals, but I can't help but feel like our ladies were waiting for the perfect setup. They were waiting for they would take, when it maybe could have been done on a first time hit, they took a second touch, or they took too heavy of a touch and it got out of reach. It's just all these little things, that of course you go back and you think about. And I can't help but wonder if maybe some of that had to do with their legs being tired because they're playing in a tournament and their coach hasn't been subbing enough. Maybe he should have subbed early on and then they'd have, fresher legs. I don't know. But either way, yeah, I think their quality in the box is just not enough. You need that big player to come in. I don't think we had that energy up top. Yes, Sophia Smith is fantastic. Alex Morgan is fantastic. Rodman is fantastic. But I think what we've seen in the past is there's always been a big energy or a big spark from someone somewhere on the pitch, whether that's Carly Lloyd or I think Julie Ertz did a lot for this team. She did so much. I mean, you could tell without hearing anything that was going on the field, you could just see by her presence that she was that dominating, like, maternal force for the team. And so I just feel for her. I feel for Rapinoe. I feel for all of them having to be out of it so soon, but yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot. So,
well, obviously, we're not saying too many things that are nuanced beyond what you can find on social media. There's no reason to pile on what is otherwise a group of world-class athletes who very much will give the United States a chance to reclaim glory at the next Women's World Cup and at other international competitions. So let's pile on you and your big loss while traveling back to the United States. You had that fantastic Alex Morgan cap, and it's somewhere back at New Zealand's international airport. I imagine somebody has scooped it up by now and added it to their collection.
Oh, they had to have, because I was on a plane full of USA fans. So somebody somewhere has received the best gift from the universe, or from my, ADD self dropping it somewhere. I don't know if it was on the airplane or if it was like as I was walking, it just dropped out of the stuff I was holding. I keep saying the entire time that I was in Australia and New Zealand, I was about a half step behind. Because every time I went to an airport, I was sprinting to my gate. I think I'm more fit than I have been in a long time, from all the walking and the sprinting in the airport and the lifting of my bags. And like, I was flying all over the place. But I'm glad I did it. I really am glad that I went there and I was there for the group stages, especially now knowing that they're out. I'm glad I got to see the big chunk of it that I wanted to see. Of course, able to shadow the broadcast there with Fox, both on the digital and the linear side. I was there for the U.S. women's game on the linear side. I was right up in it with Carly Lloyd, Ariane Hinks, Alexi Lawless, Rob Stone, all of them, just shadowing, listening to everything that they had to say, learning things from behind the scenes as well. There's just so much that we have no idea goes on behind the scenes. But learned a lot there, and I'm glad that I got to witness that second game there with them, and then I got to witness the third game in person, even though it was a tie. People talk about, man, I feel bad for all the people who flew all the way to Auckland to watch the U.S. women tie, and no, like the environment was amazing. Like the tie didn't feel the same, I think, as it did here. Because you're there, you're in the moment. There's all these fans, people are lifted and elevated. It was an experience, and it was a huge stadium, packed out. That's a big deal. It was packed out. And so I don't know, I posted about it on my social media, so you can see it if you want to like check out the video. But no, I think I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm so grateful for my experience, and I'm gonna keep following. I gotta know who wins this. I think it's Spain. I'm putting my money on Spain.
A reminder to folks who haven't followed since the start of your journey, you began in Los Angeles at the Fox Studios for the first night of competition for the United States in the group stage. That was against Vietnam. And then eventually you made your way with a connecting flight in Hawaii over to Australia. You weren't guaranteed to get to see the United States since they were in New Zealand, and you were instead at the studio set for Fox, but you did ultimately find your way over to New Zealand, which is not just a bus ride. It is not simple. What was that journey like?
Oh, that was a 3.5 hour plane ride all the way to Auckland. In fact, I booked it the day before the game because it was just like a game time decision. I thought, okay, I've got some time here. My shadowing of Fox Soccer was done, and so I thought, well, I can watch it in a bar in Sydney like I would be doing in the US, or I could just hop across the pond and go see it there. So I decided to just book a ticket. I found one relatively cheap. And it's also, AUD and New Zealand dollars help go a long way over there if you're a US person. So yeah, I went ahead and booked the ticket, and luckily I had a friend over there who I was able to stay with. And I also saw some of my teammates from the Athenians. So that was even better, to just land there and like know people and see people. And and to feel a little bit at home, even in a foreign country. It was really cool. And then, you know, that was the whole day. So I get there, I land, I get ready, we go to the game. Of course, pregame pizza is always in order. You gotta eat, gotta get your beer in, and then watch the game. Then we the next day I just went on a hike and to this kind of this sacred little mountain within the city, because all the big hikes, they're like an hour away from Auckland. I really wanted to do the whole Lord of the Rings big, like scenic hike, but there was no time. So I pretty much just did that little hike. I ate some really good food, the best food of my life, the best food of my life. I will share that as a TikTok as well. But no, it was amazing. And then I just flew to Sydney. And as soon as I landed in Sydney, I went to the France and Panama game. And so I caught the second half of that, because by the time you get all your bags through customs and everything, it's a pain in the neck. It takes a whole hour or so just to get your stuff. And they're very slow in the New Zealand airport. They are very strict about customs. I accidentally took a banana through with me from the airport, and they said, you could have gotten fined $400 for this banana. I was like, I got it in the airport, people. I'm not trying to plant bananas in New Zealand. Like, what? And so anyways, I threw it away and I was fine. Everything worked out. No harm, no foul. But just know that if you're in a time crunch, New Zealand is not the place to be, because everybody kind of putt-putts around. They go about 20 miles per hour in the car. There's no fast driving whatsoever, at least not in Auckland. And the airport, everybody kind of peruses. I think my bags went through the scan like 3 times and there was nothing in it. They just put it through the scan 3 times. Maybe I was flagged for the banana. Maybe that's what happened. But yeah, so no, but other than that, it was a great experience. Beautiful city, great food. And then Sydney was cool too. So I came back to Sydney, saw that last game. And then in the final day, I just went on a big hike to Manly Beach and met a wonderful old couple who helped me to make my way back to the ferry in time so I didn't miss my flight. And I'd say that was one of the best days, I think, that I had there in Sydney, was that hike and connecting with locals and really getting the local perspective of what Sydney is like. And the people in Sydney are just incredible. I don't think I met a single person who was a jerk or mean or anything. Everybody's just so friendly. And then ended my entire journey in Hawaii. And that was wonderful, to just chill on the beach for a couple hours and then get back on the plane, which ended up being delayed and took me about 20 hours to get home. So at least I had my one last day in paradise.
Yeah, sounds like you made the most of it. I know a lot of it was thrown together the last second, but obviously it's one of those opportunities you don't want to miss out on. Obviously, despite the early exit, you got to see what may have been the final time for several legends stood up in the red, white, and blue. And as much as people are pulling their hair out right now and will be frustrated in the future, obviously history will reflect very well on the core of this group, as well as the 14 newcomers who were with them, many of whom may be budding all-time superstars in their own right in the United States history at future international competition as well.
Yeah. Yep. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to all the growth that's going to happen, because it's going to happen. It's inevitable. So.
Well, you can continue to follow along the Women's World Cup and follow Katie's coverage on social media. You can find her on all the platforms at I'm Katie Goodman, as you see on the screen there. Katie, we've enjoyed this. It's been fun to be with you in Los Angeles, in Australia, and hear from your time in New Zealand and get your unique vantage point on that. And we have just one moment left. Do you want to confess to pulling the fire alarm in Auckland, or you want to save that for a later chat?
Definitely not guilty. Although I might have been a U.S. fan who pulled the alarm, hoping that the U.S. would pull something out of it. Who knows? Who knows? But somebody was trying to stir some sort of pot there, because it needed to be stirred. Let's just say that. But it was not me, I will admit. And the funniest thing is nobody evacuated. Nobody. Everybody was just like, eh. But I heard on the plane actually coming back from Auckland that a couple did in fact leave, and they saw smoke coming out of the stadium. So there was in fact a fire. There was an actual something in the stadium was on fire, and everybody just didn't care. everybody just stayed there. And I said, that's probably the most American thing ever, is to just a lot sirens go off and it's norm. It's the norm for us.
Yeah, with my luck, that was a scoreless match. I'd be walking out 0-0, and you'd hear a roar of the crowd, and the smoke you'd be seeing would be flares celebrating one of the two sides with a clinching goal, moving their team on. But ultimately, glad there were so many disobedient folks who decided to stick around and watch the soccer match and do so safely. You missed out on a raccoon over in Salt Lake in the midst of a Leagues Cup game in the press box, but I think it was worth it. Probably you can now hop it back into the juggling of American soccer life with NWSL still underway. Resume your schedule in the USL and NWSL, as well as juggling what's going on in the Women's World Cup. But Katie, enjoyed following your journey. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, and it's been fun.